Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in a minute here. Let me get our presentation up and everything started. This is our session on deliverability, and we'll start in about a minute here. Thank you, everyone, again for joining. And I'll just share my screen. Okay, so for this session, you will be able to have your questions answered in the Q&A. You will not be able to type into the chat for this webinar. Instead, that'll just be for our panelists to add in different articles and different resources along with what we're talking about today. But otherwise, for any questions, please ask in the Q&A. You should be able to see both chat and Q&A feature down there. And our panelists will be there to answer your questions in real time. A session should be about, I would say about 45 minutes to an hour. An hour would be if we just have a lot of questions to answer. But most of the information I'll be sharing will be in the first 40 minutes. Towards the end, if there are any questions, I will answer those live. And the session is being recorded and will be sent out to all those who registered. So if you have to leave early, anything like that, no worries. We will send out the recording and all of the resources that we're sharing at the end of the session. This one is not specifically meant for super advanced or beginner clients of MailerLite. This is more just general information that can help with your deliverability. So there might be some things you've already heard before and hopefully some things that you will learn today. All right, we're about a few minutes in, so let's go ahead and get started. Once again, any questions can go in the Q&A. This is our session on deliverability, inbox or spam. So we're just going to be talking about deliverability best practices, things that actually work to improve your inbox placement, make sure that your emails actually get delivered to your subscribers. And quick intro, my name is Harmony. I'm a customer education specialist here at MailerLite. So I write the knowledge base articles. I work with our tutorials. I've been here for about 5 years, and I know a lot about just our app and overall deliverability and sending newsletters and how to optimize that. So hopefully I can just answer some of your questions today and help make everything a little bit clearer. Okay, so our agenda. In the beginning, I'll talk about the foundation of good deliverability. So things like having your custom sending domain authenticated and set up, and make sure that you know about those things in MailerLite, what those things look like, what those things are. If you already have an authenticated domain, great. We're still going to talk about how this helps with deliverability and what this looks like in the app. Then we'll move on to more general best practices. So aside from getting your custom domain and authentication set up, we'll talk about how best practices such as keeping your list, your email list clean and active is also really helpful for deliverability, as well as just general best practices as in content as well. So we'll be talking about things in the actual newsletter that can trigger spam filters, as well as the email list. So we'll be going from domains, email list to actual content itself. And then at the end, we'll just leave room for some Q&A and to share some resources. As I said, we'll be sharing resources as the webinar goes on, but we'll make sure to share those at the end. And then if there's any questions I can answer live, I will in a Q&A. So that we'll leave some room for that. Okay. Okay, let's talk about what actually determines inbox placement. And when I talk about inbox placement, I really do literally mean where your email is placed within an inbox. So within Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, whichever inbox your subscribers have, where that email is. As we know with Gmail, you have promotion folders, social folders. So there are different ways to be placed within an inbox, not just the regular or spam. There's also different ways to be categorized within the inbox itself. So what actually determines this is many different things. It's not just authentication or best practices. It really comes down to infrastructure, reputation, and engagement. When we talk about infrastructure, that is where we talk about having your custom domain set up. Not just that, but having a good domain reputation. So what is the history of your domain? Have you been using this domain to send for a long time? Has it had good sending history, or is it brand new? that does matter when it comes to deliverability, as well as engagement. So this is a big thing as well. If your subscribers are opening your campaigns, um, making sure to engage with them, you have high click-through rates, that all counts towards inbox placement as well. We'll get into as well as bounce, things like bounce and spam rates, spam complaints, but all of that engagement does count toward deliverability. So if your subscribers are engaged, opening your newsletters, engaging with them, that is good for deliverability. If you have high bounce rates and high numbers of spam complaints, that will of course go against. Let's talk about what is a spam filter, or what actually is this thing that is determining where the email goes and what is it looking for exactly? Is this coming from MailerLite? Is this coming from outside of MailerLite? So spam filters are not something that is within MailerLite itself. That is something that the inbox provider is going to have. So we're talking about Gmail, Yahoo, all of those different inbox providers. They all have different spam filters. And what this is, it's exactly as it sounds. It's a filter, it's an algorithm, a program that is determining which incoming emails are legitimate and should land in the main inbox, and then which ones are unsolicited, malicious, low quality, or spam. So not every email that gets sent to a subscriber is going to automatically land in their inbox. It's actually going to be seen. That is determined by many things, but the spam filter is going to check for those things. And it will basically look at your email and it will determine based on several different factors from the domain to the newsletter itself whether or not it is a legitimate email that should land in the main inbox or whether or not it looks like spam. Even if you are a real sender, a real business owner who is sending, genuine information, you are not a spammer, you are not trying to spam anybody, but the email could still look like spam to those filters. So it's not necessarily about what the offer is, it's how the email actually looks and the domain itself. So what do these spam filters actually look for? We talked a bit about it already, and these will be things that I repeat throughout the webinar. We'll be talking about these things more in depth, but these are all the things that not only contribute to deliverability, but what spam filters actually look for. So of course we said sender reputation. That is based on quality, size, frequency of email campaigns, whether your domain that you're sending from, the email that you're sending from is new or it has a good sending history. Then we also have domain and IP authentication. I'll talk more about this. I'll actually show this more in the app itself. But when we talk about domain authentication, those are protocols like DKIM, SPF, DMARC. These might sound, if you're not familiar with authentication, you might not be used to hearing these records. I'll talk more about this. This is just how the inbox knows that your domain is legitimate, that it actually comes from you, that you are the one sending the email, that this is not someone trying to pretend to be you or using your domain and sending spam, that is actually your legitimate domain email address brand. That is what these protocols, these records determine. Content analysis as well. So also, as I mentioned, they do look at things like the subject line, the body text, image to text ratio, as well as spam trigger words or suspicious formatting that is associated with junk mail. So I'll go over a little bit more what this looks like in future slides. But again, this is what the content itself can do. So from the subject line itself to the text to image ratio, if a email is full of images only, that does not read well in inbox filters, that will usually be marked as spam. So it is good to have a good image to text ratio to make sure that they are even and there's not too many images in one email, as well as things like spam trigger words. So of course we do want to get subscribers' attention, especially if there's certain offers. We want to say things like, free offer or act now or limited time. And those things are not inherently bad or negative. It really depends how they're used. If you have a lot of, let's say, emojis and punctuation as well. That can also add to things if everything is capitalized, if there is a repeated amount of these trigger words. So having certain call to actions is not necessarily um, going to land you in spam filters. It really is just how many are used, what they look like, and then in it also is going to be it matters along with everything else as well. So it's not just how your newsletter looks, but with everything too. Again, we're talking about recipient engagement. That is also what spam filters will look at. So they will actually be able to know whether or not your list, whether or not your reputation has good engagement or not. Opens, clicks, lots of emails marked as spam, all those things are looked at by spam filters as well as block lists. So it is possible for a sender's domain or IP address to be marked by a block list. And block list isn't just a one term. There's different types of block lists by different providers, but they're used basically to identify spammers and, of course, block them. So if your sender domain or IP address is flagged on any of those block lists, that is also something that a spam filter will be able to see. Okay, let's going to go into custom domains and authentication. So this is going to be the infrastructure part of deliverability. The main thing that we talk about when we talk about domains and sending domains, this is the email address that you are sending from. And even though it is possible, and I will talk about this, to send emails from these free domains, it is not recommended for deliverability for many different reasons. So, one of the biggest tips, advice, recommendations that we do say is stop sending from these free domains. So, a domain is the address that you enter to visit a website, right? So, that's, for example, like google.com, YouTube, MailerLite, and the email that you send from will be connected to that domain. So if you have your website or if you have your domain, you don't need a website attached to it. It's okay if there is no actual website. The important part is the domain itself. And that makes a difference of sending from an email that looks like this versus sending from one that looks like this, that has your brand, your paid domain. This is good for many things. Deliverability, also just looking more professional, which does matter to those spam filters. If you are sending from a Gmail or a Yahoo account that looks a lot more generic and is not very obvious that is coming from a specific brand versus having your own paid domain. So we do recommend this for sending in MailerLite, just sending newsletters. You do want to be sending from a paid domain. When we talk about sending from a free email domain, it can actually affect your deliverability, even though it is possible. There are ways that it does affect. So if you are sending from a free domain still, or you don't have a paid domain yet, these are some ways that it can be affecting your deliverability. For example, free domains are commonly used by spammers, and this is something that spam filters know. So it is more likely to filter free domains as spam. Even if I said you are, as I mentioned, even if you are a legitimate sender, you are not sending anything that is spam or that is, going to be spamming people, just having that free domain can cause a spam filter to mark it, to not deliver it. You can also not authenticate free domains. So you do not own a domain that is, from Gmail or Yahoo. That is not something that you own. So you have no control over those records that I mentioned before, which are things that these spam filters look for. You have no control over how this looks to inbox providers. Whereas when you have your own paid domain, of course, you do have the option to set these up. Brand trust. So I mentioned this as well. Custom domains just look more trustworthy. If you receive lots of different emails within a day, and some of them are coming from Gmail accounts that maybe you don't recognize, and others are coming from trusted brands that you do recognize, you're more likely to engage with and open the ones that you actually recognize from the brands that you trust. So custom domains also offer that, both for the subscriber who is opening and looking at your emails and also for those inbox providers. Brand trust is looked at with all of this. Okay, as I mentioned, having a custom domain, custom sending domain, it is highly, highly recommended, but it is not mandatory. So what happens if you are using a free domain for sending in MailerLite? If you do not have your own domain yet, for whatever reason, that might be that you're just starting out with MailerLite and you are testing the system and not setting up the domain authentication yet, MailerLite will automatically assign a personalized subdomain to your email address. All that means is if you are sending from an address like this or Gmail, for example, we'll transform it into something like this with MailerLite's sending domain. And what that does is it helps your deliverability a lot more than if you were to just be sending from the free domain itself. It's MailerLite's way of still helping you be able to use MailerLite without a free or without a paid domain. For example, when it comes to Google, Gmail, and Yahoo inboxes, they will not really accept emails from from MailerLite. Let's say if you are sending newsletters from MailerLite and you are sending from these free domains, Yahoo and Gmail usually do not accept these. Whereas if you have the subdomain added that we automatically assign, it's a lot more likely to be accepted by those inboxes. So it does help your deliverability slightly, not as much as having your own domain, but enough to where you are still able to use MailerLite, still send with MailerLite using a free domain, and it will not inhibit your deliverability in a huge way, so you can still still send newsletters, of course. And if you are curious about custom domains or how to get one if you do not have one yet, so this is not something that MailerLite offers or provides or sells. There are many ways to get a custom domain, and we do have lots of resources on this that we'll be sending out after. So don't worry about that if you're not sure about where to start. But the first step is, of course, just choosing your domain name, which will most likely be your company name, your brand name, whatever brand you are using MailerLite for. That will most likely be your domain name. If you have a website already, that is your domain name. Then it's a domain provider. So this is why I say we don't offer this in MailerLite itself, because companies like GoDaddy, Namecheap, Squarespace domains, popular options that I'm sure that you maybe heard of. But these are all great options. There's also many others, but these can help you set up your domain. And this is a paid service, a paid because it's something that you will own. So having a paid domain, it is of course something that you will um, be paying for. Of course, checking domain deliverability, availability. So if that domain is already being used, of course, you'll need to have something slightly different, and then completing the transaction. So whichever you end up going with, we don't have any specific recommendations, just what we list as the usual domain providers to get that set up. And they are very low cost, usually $1 or less. Okay, so I will show a little bit about what this looks like, and then we'll move on from talking about domain authentication in general. I'll go on to the other things that affect deliverability in case some of you already have this set up. But for anyone that does not know what this looks like, I will just go through these two things within the app. So showing domain authentication, the first thing to ask is, are you using a paid domain? It doesn't need a website attached to it. Just having the custom sending domain is enough. And is that sending domain authenticated in MailerLite? That is the next step. So not only having the domain itself, but having it set up in MailerLite. So I'll just go ahead and go over to the app here. Give me one moment just to switch over. And I will show what this looks like in MailerLite. We do also have lots of resources on this. If you have not set this up before, it is quite simple. We have an automatic process now. Just one moment, getting that switched over. We also have lots of tutorial videos as well. Okay, so going over to MailerLite, you should be able to see my dashboard here. If we go over to account settings and domains, this is where you will want to set up your authentication. So here there's two different areas, sending domains and sites. This is for landing pages and websites. This is not sending newsletters. So I'm just focusing on this area here for sending domains. Once you have your domain that you have purchased and that you now own, this is where you would go in MailerLite to set that up. When a domain is authenticated, it shows the authenticated status just like this. And when it needs to be resolved, when any issues have to be resolved, you will see authentication failed like this. It'll say some type of error occurred, and it will give you the option to resolve and restart that authentication process. We do have an automatic authentication here. So what this does is it just allows you to go through the steps. It analyzes your domain. It detects the actual providers. You don't have to, tell the system what the provider is. And then from there, you just follow the prompts to authenticate your domain. And if the person that is setting this up, let's say maybe doesn't have the right access, or they do not know, they don't want to be the one to actually set up the domain authentication, you can forward this to someone else. So if there is someone else in your team that should be handling this or has the information, you can also forward it like this. And if you want to do this manually for any reason, we do have the manual authentication right here where you can see the actual records that will be added. And then you will have instructions here on how to add them. But the automatic process is, of course, the easiest way to do that. Okay, and that is more or less what it looks like when you set that up in MailerLite. And then, of course, when you are ready to send campaigns and you are getting the campaign details, that sender is going to be here. So again, that is the email that you are sending newsletters from. The domain, once the domain is added in that area I just showed, then you'll be able to set it up as the email sender. All right, I will just go back over here. Okay, so that is a quick way to understand how that is set up in MailerLite and if you already have it and if it is already authenticated. Let's talk next about domain reputation. So once that domain has been purchased, has been set up, and you're using it to send newsletters, there is something called reputation. So the history of it, or your email credit score, let's say. What damages email reputation are things like high amounts of bounces. And what the term bounce means, it is when a newsletter is sent to a subscriber, but let's say the inbox is full or that inbox is not active, so that email bounces back. It is not delivered. It is not fully, it does not reach the inbox at all. A high number of bounces shows that you are sending to inactive subscribers, people that are not actively opening your emails, maybe have not actually subscribed. Same with a high number of spam complaints, also damages reputation, of course, and this is as simple as somebody who does receive your newsletter but marks it as spam because maybe they did not sign up or they do not remember signing up, or you are sending content that isn't aligned with what they signed up for. Inactive lists will also damage reputation. So this means sending to subscribers that aren't engaging with your content in any way, um, for same reasons. Maybe they did not sign up. Maybe you're sending content that they did not sign up for. For whatever reason, that list is inactive and that does damage reputation over time, as well as sending spikes. So, sending spikes mean if you normally have a certain amount of emails that you send on a regular basis, and then suddenly you send a high amount to a lot of subscribers, a lot more than you usually would, and you do this often to where it becomes an abnormal sending pattern, it does tend to look more like spam, and those type of spikes can also damage a reputation. So having a consistent sending schedule is also important. Things that improve reputation. Permission-based lists is a big thing. So not purchasing email lists, not getting emails off of social media or public websites where they haven't actually given permission or subscribed. This is very important. It actually is something that affects your deliverability when you are sending to subscribers that have actually signed up and are expecting your content and are engaging. Consistent sending, as I mentioned, so avoiding those large email spikes. One or two over time is okay. So if you do have a large promotion or you do have something that is going out to a larger audience than normal, that is not automatically going to go against reputation. It is if you are consistently having those spikes. So consistent sending is important still. High engagement, of course, that will improve reputation. So that just means opens, clicks, anything like that. And clean data. So just keeping those bounce rates low, keeping those spam complaints low, as well as the number of unsubscribes. Unsubscribes are normal, but any of this in high amounts is what affects reputation. So bounces are normal. Bounces will happen. Spam complaints may happen here and there. Same thing with unsubscribes. All of these things are normal. It is just the amount. So whether or not it becomes a high amount or whether or not it becomes the data looks like you have consistently a lot of bounces, unsubscribes. So let's go ahead and look at this in MailerLite itself. When we talk about spam complaints and bounce rates, this can actually all be seen within the app. So we're looking here at campaigns. Let's go over to subscribers first. Here in the subscribers tab, it automatically shows your active list. So these are subscribers that have not unsubscribed, have not bounced, they're active and can be emailed. That is what is shown by default. But as you can see, you are able to see all of the other areas. So you can see the unsubscribed, the bounces, spam complaints if there are any, as well as unconfirmed. Unconfirmed has to do with forms. If you're using double opt-in, for example, I won't go too into this, but if a subscriber has been sent a confirmation email saying, confirm this to confirm your email address to become a subscriber, if they do not confirm their address at all, they will be unconfirmed, considered not active. Same thing with bounced. So bounces are in two different categories. There are soft bounces and hard bounces. And if we go over to campaigns and we look at a sent campaign, let's look at the report. This one won't have too many stats, but that's okay. Every campaign that you have sent, you can look at the overview and see these details. You can see the unsubscribes, you can see spam complaints, and you can see the bounces separated into hard bounce and soft bounce. A soft bounce means that it is a temporary issue. So it is something that prevented the email from being delivered, but it is not something that is permanent. The subscriber might still be active, but for some reason they were not able to receive that email when it was sent. That is considered a soft bounce because they might be able to receive the next email that you've sent. However, if an address soft bounces 3 times, it becomes a hard bounce. Or this can happen the first time. If the inbox isn't active, if the email address had a typo and doesn't actually exist, for many reasons, it can be a hard bounce, just meaning it does not get delivered to the subscriber, to the inbox at all. Those hard bounces are moved into this bounced category so that they are removed from your list. You do not want to email bound subscribers because it has already been proven that the email does not get delivered. It actually goes against their reputation. So if you were to send emails to these bound subscribers, it would be going against that reputation that we talked about. So because of that, we separate them into a separate area. So they are still on your list. They're not removed, but they cannot be emailed. Same thing if you look in any of your groups or segments, for example. Let's find a group. These are all, here we go. Let's find a group with some subscribers. When we look at our groups, same thing. It automatically shows the active subscribers in that group. If any of those subscribers in the group were bounced, unsubscribed, unconfirmed, it would also show here. So you can also see it broken down within your groups and segments, which subscribers are active or not. Okay, so that is what we are talking about when we talk about these different categories, these different subscriber statuses. All right, just let me go back here. Okay. And next, we'll talk about list hygiene. So this has to do with your email list itself. We've talked a lot about the domain, the reputation, what it looks like to have good reputation versus bad. Now let's talk about the actual subscribers on your list. Who is actually in your email list? A larger list is not necessarily better. A list of 10,000 engaged subscribers is going to be better than 50,000 inactive subscribers. If you have a list that is engaged, meaning they open your emails, they click the different links in your emails, they go through to the offers, they are active, they're not unsubscribed, their emails don't bounce, that is going to be much more helpful for deliverability versus just having a large list that is not active. How to keep your list active, how to make sure that you do have a clean email list or good list hygiene, as we say. Removing hard bounces. So MailerLite does this for you automatically, as I showed, but it is important to make sure that you are not sending emails. Well, it's not possible to send emails to hard bounces, but it is advised to just make sure that you are keeping an eye on how many hard bounces you are receiving, what those look like, and then just checking where they are. But we do remove those automatically. Segment inactive. So I'll talk about this when I show the app itself. But those inactive subscribers that have maybe been on your list for, let's say, 6 months, 9 months, a year, they've been on your list for a while, they have not unsubscribed, but they're also not opening any emails, they're not engaging in any way. Those are considered inactive. And instead of automatically unsubscribing them or getting rid of those subscribers, let's say, you can re-engage those inactive subscribers of yours. Running re-engagement campaigns, running re-engagement emails, and segmenting those inactive is good to make sure your list stays active. And if they are not, if you do reach out to these subscribers and they still do not engage in any way, it is better to say goodbye to inactive subscribers if you have tried to re-engage them. So let's look at this in the app itself. Cleaning and segmentation within MailerLite. So back over here, we have the subscribers tab. There are different ways to do this. Let's look at the cleanup inactive, which is a built-in feature. This shows your inactive subscribers. So this looks at time inactive and emails sent. How long have they been inactive for? 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. They've never never opened an email once. And how many chances have they had? How many emails have they been sent? That will bring up this list so you're able to see the inactive. Now you do have the option to unsubscribe these emails right then and there. You can also save as a segment or export these emails. Even though there is the option to unsubscribe, we usually recommend first, and as you can see here, before you unsubscribe, you can try a win back campaign. Let's go back to all subscribers. There are different ways to get this set up from going to the automations tab, but we made it easy also right here. You can see we have this option in the subscribers area to re-engage those inactive. And when you click that, it will automatically create the segment for you. So email actions not opened or clicked in the last 90 days, and campaigns was opened, any campaign. Here you can, of course, adjust this to any amount, but it is default at 90. And what this does is it brings up that list of inactive subscribers that meet those conditions. If you save that segment, you can see it gives you the option to do a few different things with that segment. You can send a campaign, so just a one-off newsletter, or an automation. Let's go ahead and look at the automation. Save and continue. Both are great options. It just depends if you want to send one newsletter to re-engage those subscribers or if you want to have a full workflow. This automatically gives you the trigger, which is when they join that segment that we just created in a few seconds. Here we can add an email step. I'm not really going to explain too much how automations function, more focusing on these specific steps. So they join the segment that we just set up. This is how they enter this workflow. They are inactive subscribers. They enter the workflow. Send email is where the email step goes right here. Wherever that email step is, an email is sent. And we can also set up a condition as well. In the email step, we can set up our re-engagement campaign. And this lets you set up name, subject, and design email will take you right into the email editor to set up what that email will look like. From there, we can use a condition step to see if that email has been opened or not, has it been engaged with or not. So we can go to workflow activity, re-engagement campaign. I'm moving kind of quickly here so you can just see how this would be set up. Let's go with was opened. So now we set up a condition in this workflow to see if this campaign right here was opened. Save. When this step is reached, the workflow will check if the subscriber opened this email or not. Let's give them some time to open the email. Let's give them 1 week. So we don't want to just send the email and then right away check if they opened it. They're most likely not going to open it within a few seconds. So we add a delay. So first, they joined our inactive segment that we just created automatically. They are sent the re-engagement email. A week passes, giving them time to engage with it, open it, and then we check if it was opened or not. Was the email opened? If it was, maybe we can move them to a group. So if it was opened, that means they actually are engaged. So maybe we move them from our inactive group and move them to our customers group. Because if they did open the email, they actually are an engaged subscriber. We don't want them to be in an active group anymore. Let's move them to a different group. If a week passed and they still haven't opened that email, maybe we give them one more chance. Maybe we send one last chance email. Give some time for that one to be opened. Let's give another week, let's say. And if they still have not opened this email, let's say they received this first one, didn't open it, received the second one, we can have another condition here that says, was the second one opened or not, by setting up the same rules. And if they have been given all of these chances and still have not opened your email, we can actually just unsubscribe. So this is why we say not to unsubscribe right away, and instead put them through a workflow that looks something like this, where they join the segment, they're sent the re-engagement email, they're given time to open it. If they open it, they are moved to a different area because they're not inactive anymore. If they haven't opened it, they're given one more chance, maybe one or two more, depending on how you want to set this up. If that still isn't opened, we can go ahead and say goodbye. That is how something like that would be set up from scratch kind of quickly. If you are setting up automations for the first time, or you are not used to setting up these win-back campaigns, you can see that when I went to new automation right here, instead of starting from scratch, I can also just start from these templates. So retarget subscribers, win back inactive. So if we click win back inactive, this is available on free plans, by the way. So if you're on a free plan, you can use this. And this will basically give you that exact structure that I set up, but already in a pre-filled template. And then all you would have to do is fill in these offers, these steps here. Okay, let's go ahead and go back. Okay, hopefully this is not moving too fast for anyone. As I mentioned, this is not geared for beginners or advanced. This is general information. So this might be moving quickly for some. For others, I might be repeating information you've already heard. Hopefully everyone is still able to learn something. That is list cleaning. We just looked at the demo. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up our session. This is going to be the last part that I will talk about as far as sharing information. We're at 45 minutes. So I'm going to talk about inbox visibility best practices, some just general best practices after we've talked about domains, reputation, lists, all of that. These are going to be more of, let's call it the little things. And then I will look at some questions if I can answer. So spammy content is also a big one. So when you are writing your emails, as I mentioned, it's okay to have call to action. It's okay to say, that you have an offer or that something is, urgent. These things are not bad marketing practices, but it is good to avoid writing these pushy emails that make claims that are too good to be true. So things like 100% free or having, as I mentioned, lots of punctuation, exclamation points, lots of emojis, one or two used sparingly is okay. But when things are used in excess, it does start to look more spammy, more like spam. Some additional tips, kind of last things before we completely wrap up. Test your emails before sending them. Before you send your newsletter, send a test email to yourself to see how it actually looks in the inbox when it arrives. That will show you a lot. What the subject line looks like, how it looks like in comparison to other emails that are in your inbox, how the wording looks. You can test how all of your links work. That's the second one. Checking your link quality as well. So what exactly are you linking to? That is a big one. If you are linking to external sites that are more commonly used by spammers or by spam emails, that is going to affect deliverability. Whereas if you are linking to, say, your own website, your own offers, things that are legitimately from your business, that matters. So when you test your emails, you can check your links as well, not only where you're linking to, but if all links actually work. I mentioned optimizing image to text ratio. There are some specific, I guess, formulas to this. The main thing here is just do not overload your newsletter with images. Text is not too bad. We do have rich text emails. So we have emails that can be, of course, written with just text. You don't actually have to have images at all. Images are okay. That is fine. It is fine to have surveys. It's fine to have videos. All of that in your newsletters is encouraged. But it is just the ratio of those things. As I mentioned, never using purchase lists, never using scraped lists or anything like that. So making sure that your subscribers have actually subscribed, they are expecting your content, that is what will lead them to actually engage with it. Letting people unsubscribe. This is a big one. So not only legally is it important to let people unsubscribe, it is not possible to send newsletters in MailerLite without an unsubscribe link. Um, I think that there might be, some ideas that if the subscribe link is hidden or hard to find or in a different color, then that'll deter people. But really, it doesn't. If they want to unsubscribe and they cannot find the unsubscribe link very easily, they're more likely to mark your email just as spam. So it's not so much going to keep them on your list as it is maybe going to turn them to, mark it as spam over just unsubscribing. So not only having that unsubscribe link there, which is automatically included in MailerLite, but just making sure that it is visible and that that letting people unsubscribe is helpful. It is beneficial. And as we mentioned, cleaning your list regularly. We talked about what that looks like. You can do that within MailerLite itself, setting up re-engagement campaigns to make sure those subscribers are engaged with at least once before we completely say goodbye. But that is also very important. All right, and that basically wraps up the session. We are about 10 minutes before, I guess, the official end time. I will just go ahead and look at if there's any questions I can answer live. I do know maybe I moved a little quickly, hopefully didn't talk too fast. I wanted to give a lot of different information, and this was very general information as well. So let me just have a quick look here. So someone is asking, is there a way to monitor how many times a user has gone through this loop? I believe you're talking about that automation loop that we set up. It does not really loop in that way. So as you can see at the very end of a workflow like that, it's either one of two things happen. Either they're determined to be an active subscriber and they're moved to a different group, or they're determined to still be inactive and they're unsubscribed. So at the end of that workflow, one of two things happens. It's not so much that the subscriber is, being constantly reached out to. It's when there's a certain point that they become inactive, we try to re-engage. If it doesn't work, we either unsubscribe, or if it does work, we keep them. That's also possible. So someone also said, if they open the re-engagement email, you can just remove them from the inactive segment. Absolutely. This actually happens automatically. So you don't have to remove them from the segment yourself. That is the kind of how the beauty of how segments work is when they are no longer inactive, they will no longer be in that segment. So let me show you what I mean by that. If we look at subscribers and we look at that re-engagement, those subscribers are the ones that currently meet those conditions, right? So not opened or not clicked in the last 90 days. Let's remove this one. If this, so if this subscriber opens an email today, they will no longer meet the conditions of that segment and they'll be removed automatically. So that is not something you have to do yourself. They will just no longer be there. Okay. Someone asked if they can get the Q&A questions. I will put together summary, let's say, of the Q&A of the most asked questions and the answers, and that will all be in the follow-up email. So we'll make sure that all of those are answered. And yes, all of the links that were posted as answers to questions or within the chat will all be sent out in the follow-up email along with a lot more. We have a lot more resources we'll be sharing as well. Someone asked about the welcome, about the workflow. Is the automation workflow setup available for regular automations like a welcome sequence? Yes, so that workflow setup that I showed you, that is available for free plans, for just regular automations. Anyone with an account has access to that re-engagement sequence I showed. Oh, this is a good question. I do want to touch on this. So somebody did ask, sometimes it looks like people open and click links immediately. What's going on there? So there's that, and there's also sometimes it can look like they're clicking the link many, many, many times, almost too many times to make sense. That is actually usually those spam filters. So it's not always going to show this. This can be if the subscriber has maybe some additional security set up. So you won't always see this for every subscriber, right? Even though spam filters are common, are universal, it's not always going to show that they're opening and clicking things. But if a subscriber has an inbox that maybe has additional security checks, that's very common for like corporate inboxes, work style inboxes, for example, will have additional security checks beyond what the normal protocols are. And that includes these additional spam filters, actually, yes, clicking the links and opening the emails. And it will look like it happens immediately and it happens multiple times. And that is a spam filter or an additional security that is doing that. Not to make it sound like that's going to completely skew your data or that there's all these bots opening your emails. Not really. It's more, like I said, certain inboxes will have additional security features. That's when you will see that. It's not super common that's going to happen that you'll see all over all over the stats. All right. Looks like there are some few more good questions. Let me see if I can just answer anything else here. So I do see a question about the images because I mentioned having good ratio or good not having too many images. What is considered too many images? I wanted to make sure that I gave a completely accurate answer to this because there are different, I guess, ideas. But this will be sent out along with the resources. This is one of our blogs, our MailerLite blogs that we have published on our site. Wanted to make sure that I had the exact number. We give this advice, keep a good balance between images and text. Zoom in a little bit. So I'm not just going to read this, but a good rule of thumb is to make the ratio 1/3, one part of the email images and two parts text. That is, again, what we're calling a good rule of thumb, not a formula that you have to follow to have good deliverability. But if you are wondering what is too many images, what is a good ratio, it is that 1/3. That is kind of how we recommend it. And then we also recommend to look at our newsletter templates because all of our templates will have a good ratio like that. So if you have access to any of our email templates, or even if you don't, you can access templates right on our website. And as you can see, you can still look through all of these newsletter templates. And this will kind of give you a good idea of what good email ratio text to image is when you can see, the layout and everything like that. All right, I think that is about it. We'll wrap up here. Let me just see, maybe there's anything I can answer quickly. Is it bad practice to add HTML in my email? No, not necessarily. I think HTML, of course, it will depend what exactly it is. HTML is not, it's not we have an HTML editor specifically. That might be better if you are building emails with code. Whereas if you just have one code block in a newsletter, in a drag and drop newsletter, let's say, no, I wouldn't say that's automatically bad practice. More just what is it? What is the HTML, of course? What is the code being added? Okay. Any tips for new email addresses in MailerLite? So I would say this kind of depends on if you already have a list or not. If you already have a list that is engaged that you've already sent to, it's okay to still just send to that from the new address. That is going to help warm up your list. And there are ways to do that well, but that is how you would start, is if you already have a list of engaged subscribers that you have sent to, that you are emailing. One of the, I guess, bad, worst things you could do as a person in MailerLite with a new email would be to send to a list that maybe you've never sent to before, that you don't know if is active, that you don't know if is engaged, because you're going to get mixed data, which is not going to be good necessarily for new email addresses. So if you already have an engaged email list, it is okay to send to them to warm up that new address. Any tips for subscribers to confirm their email address after being added to the list? I believe this is talking about the unconfirmed. It's a little bit complicated because you cannot really reach out to them like in any way to ask them to confirm. It's not, they have to confirm their address themselves. And it's like I said, it's not possible to send them an email saying, oh, please confirm your email address or have you noticed this? One of the easiest ways to make sure a subscriber knows that they have to confirm their email address is by having a look at the forms that have it set up or landing pages, the success page. So the page that says, thank you for subscribing, thank you for submitting your info, thank you for joining my list, whatever the success page says. On that page, you can have a message that says, be sure to check your email for the confirmation, or be sure to check your inbox, or anything that you're going to send. That is probably the main way, just because it is not possible, as I mentioned, to send um, them any to reach out if they have not confirmed. All right, and I see we're 2 minutes over the hour mark, so I'll go ahead and wrap up here completely. I do see we have a lot of questions, and I do really appreciate that. Looks like we had a lot of people in here today, so thank you. I hope I was able to just help clear things up, not talk too fast or show things too quickly, answer some questions, and maybe you learned something new. We do hold webinars every week, usually. I will send out all the information as well as this recording in probably the next hour or so. And that is basically it. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the next ones. Bye everyone.